The All Blacks Eden Park record, folks, goes back to 1994. It has become the main talking point for every Eden Park test these days. And now, with the most recent win over the Irish, it stretches to 53 games. One of these days, the record will be broken. But for now, it remains one of the more impressive records for being undefeated at a particular venue in world sports. Let's have a look back at the record to see, does it actually cut the mustard? Have the All Blacks been facing tough opponents at Eden Park, or do we kind of cherry pick the weakest teams to play and extend the record further? And you guys can let us know your thoughts. The tool we'll be using for that is largely the world rankings to compare what were New Zealand's ranking at the time they played a match compared to their opponent to see just how tough or easy that opponent was. Starting in 1994, we've got to think, though, the world rankings didn't exist in 1994. So the first 11 games of this 53-game run, we can't look at a world rankings number to compare the two teams. I can tell you that we played the Boks 3 times, including a team which would go on to win the World Cup in 95. That was a draw, New Zealand and South Africa in 94. There's a world champion Boks team which came a couple of years later in 97. The All Blacks managed to win that one. The Aussies had a team tour 3 times as well in those first 11 matches, including the 2003 team, which would go on to make a World Cup final not too long later. Includes Gregan and Larkham and Latham and all those Wallabies legends. The Scots came twice. The English came twice. No, English came once. The Irish came once. And who do you think the other team that came is? Give you 1 second to think about it. Canada. Canada also came early on in those rugby years. Then we get the Rugby World Rankings initiated in 2003. Who have we played the most since then, and have they been tough opponents? The vast majority of the games have been the Aussies. You may think, the Wallabies are not a very good team, Mark. So clearly that's a big chunk of your record, which is very easy to win matches. But that's an easy lens to look at if you're thinking through the vein of 2026, when the Wallabies are ranked like the 8th best team in the world. Throughout the 2000s and the 2010s, they were a much stronger team than they are now. So were the All Blacks, to be fair. But the rivalry between Australia and New Zealand was much bigger as well than it is now. Right now, the rivalry has clearly switched focus from New Zealand to South Africa. This greatest rivalry tour is starting this year to really cash in on that current rivalry between the sides. But it used to be Bledisloe. When I was growing up, it was all about the Bledisloe. The messaging you would receive from the All Blacks, like players and coaches and whatnot, was the one trophy we don't want to lose is the Bledisloe. Apart from the World Cup, they would say, we'd rather win the Bledisloe or retain the Bledisloe than win the Rugby Championship or the old Tri-Nations. That was literally the messaging. So All Blacks Wallabies was a massive, massive deal. So it absolutely made sense to put what was arguably your biggest home game of the calendar year at your biggest stadium at Eden Park. Make sure you sell it out. If you've got smaller teams coming, like when the Pumas first started coming here, we would send them to Nelson or some smaller city where they were a little bit more worried they wouldn't sell the ground out. Eden Park, you put the Aussies there, you sell the ground out. And as I said, they were a strong team back then. Like, of the 18 games, the recent history is a bit of a mismatch between the All Blacks and the Wallabies. But in the 2000s and 2010s, 4 of those matches are number 1 against number 2 in the world. So literally you can't pick a stronger opponent. And 7 of the matches are 1 against 3. So the top 3 teams in the world, New Zealand was number 1 in all of those situations, but the Aussies were either 2nd in the world or 3rd in the world. And when they were 3rd, several of those times they were still ahead of South Africa. South Africa were further down the world rankings. South Africa went up and down, World Cup success, higher in the rankings, and then dropped back down, coaching changes, all pre-Russie stuff. So the Wallabies genuinely used to be a very strong opponent. Since the 2020s, it's obviously gone on a downward trajectory for the Aussies and the All Blacks, to be fair. Our world ranking is no longer constantly number 1. We're often number 2 or number 3 or number 4. So there's matches where it's like 2nd against 5th, 2nd against 6th, 4th against 9th in terms of the world rankings. But back in the 2000s and the 2010s, big games, 2 of the best teams in the world going head-to-head at Eden Park. By no means an easy match to win. For the Boks, we only played them 3 times at Eden Park since the world rankings were established, and every single time In 2010, 2013, and 2025, it's 1 against 2. Again, can't pick a stronger opponent. It is unusual that there are not more Bok games at Eden Park. There are 2 other games in Auckland, but not at Eden Park. One of them was in 2023 at Mount Smart Stadium. That's because the women's football is on. Eden Park was genuinely booked up, and then one was at North Harbour, which was that big drubbing. But it does seem low that the Boks don't appear more times on this list. But yeah, it's only 3. Hopefully it'll be more in the future. France appear 5 times, although one difference they've got compared to the Boks is they've got 2 World Cup appearances here in 2011. We didn't play the Boks at Eden Park in 2011, so there's not that kind of extra chance to notch up those appearances. So France came to New Zealand in 2007 as the reigning Six Nations champions, number 2 team in the world against the number 1 All Blacks, so that's a pretty good challenge. Other matches have been 1 versus 3, 1 versus 5, 1 versus 6. And as I said, a World Cup finals in there in the mix as well. The most mismatched time between the All Blacks and French at Eden Park was 2018. That's when this channel was very much in its infancy, and that was 1st versus 8th. And that was an interesting turning point year because the French were about to see the big emergence of the likes of Dupont and Penaud and all these under-20s guys who would step up under Galtier. The French were going to very much turn their trajectory around. 8th. The French were 8th. And the Boks were 7th because Russie had only just recently taken over as well. So a very different picture. That's why I say you can't look at these world rankings and go, oh, we played the Aussies 18 times. We were always picking the weak team. Things have changed so much in a decade or less. England, we played 4 times, 1st versus 3rd, top Northern Hemisphere team, 1st versus 4th, 2nd versus 5th, 3rd versus 5th. So just the 4 matches, but never 1 versus 2. Ireland, their most recent match where we got the 53rd win, that was 2nd against 3rd in the rankings. We've also had 3rd versus 4th, which was an interesting tour because that was the opening one when the Irish would go on to win the next 2 for the tour, the series win, but they lost the first one at Eden Park when it was 3rd against 4th. The British and Irish Lions obviously got a draw there. Those are not world rankings matches. Argentina have played twice, including a World Cup game. Wales once, Tonga once, and Samoa once. So there are some games which are genuinely lower ranked teams, like Samoa was 14th, Tonga was 12th in the World Cup, but always top 10 otherwise, and a huge chunk are 1 against 2 or 1 against 3. Like literally 20% of the games, it's the 1st ranked team in the world against the 2nd ranked team in the world. 20% of the fixtures, and then just under half, like it's 1st against 3rd or 2nd against 3rd. So 2 of the best 3 teams in the world. The rest of them, there's a bunch of, as I said, 1st versus 4th, 2nd against 5th, that kind of thing. And then the Wallabies ones genuinely are a bit lower ranked as they fell off the pace a bit in the 2020s. But overall, I think it's a pretty good record for Eden Park. I think it's something the All Blacks should be proud of. I do think it's going to create a kind of pressure cooker situation that both teams are going to feel the pressure. The All Blacks don't want to be that first team to lose the record. The visiting team will have that in their minds. If they're up by 2 points with 5 minutes to go, they don't want to be the team to let it slip through their fingers. As I said, someone will get it one of these days. There's been a couple of draws. The Lions and the Boks got close. But yeah, so far the record holds, despite some pretty good teams coming to town. You guys let us know your thoughts. Who would you like to see visit more? Obviously, the Boks will get a crack, assuming that Wallabies don't break it in the upcoming matches for the Bledisloe Cup. Like the Boks will get a chance when the greatest rivalry resumes on the New Zealand leg of that competition, because New Zealand are touring South Africa this year. You can bet it'll be at Eden Park in a few years' time, so they'll get a crack if the record still holds until then. Some other teams will get a crack for this new Nations Championship as teams come to New Zealand. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts on the record. Who do you reckon breaks it? Or do you reckon it keeps holding for another decade or so? You guys take care. Subscribe if you enjoyed this. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.